Welcome in, Dween Nation. We are the Dween Sports Podcast, and we are just about to get started. But before we do, we'd love if you could like, comment, subscribe, and share so we can continue to be your fantasy sports podcast. Thanks for being part of Dween Nation, and enjoy the show. Welcome in, Dween Nation. This is your host, Justin Pies, alongside Genoa Agudelo, and we are continuing our rankings episode. We already had quarterbacks. Now we're on to tight ends. We're discussing the top 10. Super excited to do so. But before we do, how you doing, Genoa?
Yo, Dween Nation. Justin, we're just less than a few weeks away from our drafts. We got three in less than a span of a day and a half. And so we're just gearing up there. And I know a lot of y'all in Dween Nation are already drafting your teams, already have drafted and going to draft. Doesn't matter. Go ahead and watch these rankings, man. We are on the road to the kickoff of the season. It's officially underway, Justin. I'm so excited. I cannot be more excited.
Yeah, and honestly, tight end this year, I feel like is very different. We'll kind of get into it, but there's like a top tier guys, then there's a middle tier, and then there's like a little another middle tier. And then after you get under those top 10, there are a couple flyers, a couple upside plays, but it to me, it really dies down pretty quickly. But let's dive into our top 10 here. And we both have at number one, Brock Bowers pretty easily. I have him at number one because he was the top guy last year in total points for the tight end position. He gets Geno Smith. He gets a better coach in Pete Carroll. And there's not that much competition. I know they got Jacoby Myers. I know they added Ashton Genty, but Bowers is going to be the easy number one target here.
Yeah, Justin, it's for sure going to be Bowers. I think he's going to be the number one tight end just because of the game script that the Raiders are going to be in, right? I don't really think the Raiders are going to have a lot of leads. They're going to be playing from behind. That means Geno Smith is going to be throwing, and Bowers is going to be the number one target. Not to mention the quarterbacks he played with last year was with Gardner Minshew and like Aiden O'Connell. I'm not the biggest Geno Smith fan, but Geno Smith is better than both those quarterbacks. And with Pete Carroll there and that new offense that's installed in Vegas, I do think that Bowers is going to get a lot more targets. And a lot of defenses are going to be, looking to, I think it's Jacoby Myers is the wide receiver there. And so I think he's going to have a great year as well when they're throwing, playing from behind. So that's why for me, I'm going to agree with you. That's why Bowers is my number one tight end.
I think that's a super valid point with the game script that the Raiders are going to be a part of. So I completely agree there. We moved to 2, and for me, Trey McBride's at my number 2, but they're pretty interchangeable, I'd say. Bowers and McBride. If you go one way or the other, I don't bat an eye to it because McBride also was a top tight end last year, only a few points behind Brock Bowers in total points, and that was with only scoring one receiving touchdown last year. That's he's in store for some massive touchdown regression this season with Kyler, and that's the only reason I probably don't have him over Brock is Kyler Murray. We've discussed on this podcast how our distaste for Kyler, how we've not seen an improvement, and how he seems to have a good game, and then he disappears. But what are your thoughts with Trey McBride versus Brock Bowers?
He did have 2 touchdowns last year. McBride did, and I think it's going to definitely hit around 6 or 7 this year. But it took him till like week 15 or 16, Justin, to hit that touchdown. This year, I think he'll score as early as week 1 or 2 for sure. I think Bowers is the more talented tight end. He's the better route runner. He has more speed. But McBride is in a better offense, in my opinion, with the better quarterback. And this is a team that, could be looking in another direction as far as quarterback. If Kyler Murray doesn't really hit in the butt this year, if they don't win about 8 or 9 games. So I think all the pressure is on Murray. And I think that the sense of urgency that Jonathan Gannon and this offensive staff is going to have to put together. And I'm no doubt that McBride is going to have the better year. I do think Bowers is the better player. However, Justin, when you talk about fantasy and drafting, Bowers goes as early as the 2nd or 3rd round, where I think McBride can kind of fall in that area too. But I think there's a little bit of wiggle room to wait for McBride. I think he is gone by the 4th, but you can definitely get him wait maybe a round than you would for Bowers. For me, I'm going to go with McBride because I think that he's in the better offense. I think that the game script could call for a lot of shootouts with Arizona as far as Las Vegas. I'm not the biggest Geno fan, so there might be a ton of inconsistencies there in Vegas, and so there might be some games where Bowers doesn't do much. And not to mention, like Sam LaPorta, he had a great rookie year, and then last year, his second year, he was good, but he just had some games where he didn't do much. I think that could be the thing with Bowers this year.
I think you nailed it. You stole the words right from me, especially with the ADPs. I'm looking here on Fantasy Pros. Bowers is going at 17th overall, which is in the second round. And McBride is going at 27, which is near the end of the 3rd. I'd much rather take the value of McBride than Bowers. So we're in agreement there. We move to the 3rd tight end, where I have George Kittle. You have Sam LaPorta. I'll start with my Kittle take here. I love Kittle just because last year he actually was the tight end one in points per game. He did miss a couple games. That's why he wasn't number one over Brock Bowers. But in points per game, he was the highest. And if you look at this year, Jawan Jennings is injured. Brandon Ayuk is injured. Deebo Samuel left. Christian McCaffrey is always at risk for injury. They have Ricky Pearsall, who's coming off a rookie season where, he was injured. He did get shot. And there's a lot of excitement for Ricky Pearsall, but the ball's got to go elsewhere as well. And Purdy's number one receiving target is George Kittle. And that's why I think he's kind of in this upper echelon with McBride and Bowers. But after Kittle, there's a drop for me. What do you think?
Yeah, last year he did pretty good. He played 15 games, so he did miss 3. Was able to get 1,000 yards with 8 touchdowns there. So pretty impressive, despite the 49ers just being broken all apart last season, coming off that Super Bowl loss. And they had McCaffrey in and out the line. They had different running backs. They had Jordan Mason, they had Isaac Guerrero. So I'm really down on the 49ers this year, to be honest. You mentioned that, Kittle is going to be Brock Purdy's really only target there with the receiver. There's a wide receiver issue there in San Francisco going on. And so for me, that kind of that's the reason why I think I have LaPorta much more ahead of him. Now, LaPorta, yes, he is on an offense that's tons of mouths to feed, Justin, but I do think that it doesn't matter. LaPorta is going to be a dump-off guy for Jared Goff there. I think in his 3rd year in the NFL. He had a good finish this season. He had some spots where he missed games in the middle. He had some slow games where he didn't do much. Kind of like how Mark Andrews was last year, the first 5 to 6 weeks of the season. But I think that LaPorta is going to have a more of a bounce back year, more of a dominant season, kind of reminiscing to his rookie year. And that's the reason why I have LaPorta overhead of Kittle. I just feel like Kittle's going to be really the only guy that Purdy's going to go to. Justin, McCaffrey is struggling with injuries this year. Really, Kittle is all they've got. Jawan Jennings is in a contract issue. Obviously, you mentioned what's going on with Pearsall, and we don't know if we're going to see Ayuk. God knows what's going to happen. And so Kittle's really going to be the only guy that defense is going to be throwing a ton of attention to. As we're LaPorta, there's going to be, more attention to stopping the running game for Detroit, or Amon-Ra St. Brown, or even Jameson Williams, where a lot of people that think Jameson Williams is going to have a breakout year. So that leaves LaPorta to be a dominant red zone target.
Yeah, no, I'm interested with your take with LaPorta because fortunately for me, last year my biggest take was LaPorta was going to be the bust of the tight ends last year. I was correct. I'm happy to be correct. Unfortunately, not happy that LaPorta didn't play it up to the standard where people were drafting him. But this year, I look at the team in a similar way. And in fact, I unfortunately look at LaPorta in the same light because with Sam LaPorta, he's very touchdown dependent. He's not a super high target volume guy. And when you look at what you had mentioned, the Lions have a lot of mouths to feed. Amon-Ra St. Brown, J-Mo, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, even Tim Patrick was getting in the end zone a couple times last year. And I think what LaPorta was able to do last year was actually really solid. It was a step back from his rookie season, but then I think this Lions team is going to take a step back in 2025 with the loss of the coordinators and with Frank Ragnow. I think that LaPorta just needs to have near double-digit touchdowns to return value. He's currently going at the tight end 4 right now, which is in the 5th round, which that's not terrible value, but I think for me, where I was going with Kittle is I had those top 3 guys. I have Brock Bowers, I have Trey McBride, I have George Kittle. And after that, I'm going to take a nice break from tight ends for at least a few rounds before I want to dive back in. So if LaPorta is able to drop in your drafts, Dween Nation, from the 5th round to maybe the 6th, 7th round, I would be happy then to take him. But that's where my stance is. You talked about Kittle. I talked about LaPorta. Let's move to the next one where you have Kittle. So you only have him one spot lower, which is great. But now a new tight end introduces my 4th tight end, and that is TJ Hockenson for the Minnesota Vikings. And I'm actually super excited for Hockenson because, yes, I think a lot of people were thinking about last year. He didn't perform well. He was coming off the ACL injury. But, it takes about a year for these tight ends to come back, or for players in period to come back from big injuries like that. And he hurt himself, I believe, in week 15 of the 2023 season. So he was coming back a little bit early, and it showed. He wasn't ready, and he wasn't, particularly good in fantasy. But now this year, another year removed from the injury, you have a rookie quarterback, essentially a rookie quarterback, and Justin Jefferson hasn't been practicing in camp because of the hamstring injury. Then you have Jordan Addison, who's going to miss the first 3 games with the suspension. I think early and on that J.J. McCarthy and T.J. Hockenson are going to have a connection that's special, and I think where T.J. Hockenson is going is actually I'm more apt to do that. He's in the 6th round, and honestly, right now, I would take him over LaPorta because I know that Hockenson's going to get that volume compared to LaPorta in Detroit. But what do you think about TJ Hockenson this season?
Yeah, Justin, he didn't score a touchdown last year. Like you mentioned that, a lot of fantasy owners were very disappointed with TJ Hockenson. The main thing that I'm it's not really anything to do with TJ Hockenson. It's all to do with JJ McCarthy. I'm still very, very skeptical. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to this year. How is JJ McCarthy going to perform? Because he has a pretty good offense around him if executed the right way. You mentioned Justin Jefferson. Yes, he'll be without Jordan Addison for just a couple games, but once he's back, he will be a really good wide receiver too. I do like Jalen Naylor as well. And so I just feel like that's one of the things that I'm skeptical about. And no doubt that TJ Hockenson is going to return back to the number one tight end status that he was even in those first couple years when he was in Detroit. And I feel like I think that looking at what he was last year, he did have 62 targets there with only playing 10 games, like you mentioned, after an ACL injury. So I do like him where you're ranking him, Justin. I think that if he plays a full 18 game slate, I think he'll definitely get. I mean, he had 62 targets right in 10 games off an injury, so I'm thinking he could probably get 100 targets like his fellow teammate Justin Jefferson. I do like 5 to 6 touchdowns. I don't know if he hits 1,000 yards because if it was Sam Darnold, if it was a Kirk Cousins passing the ball, I'd say 1,000 yards. But like I've said, JJ McCarthy is really the only question mark because I have no doubt that TJ Hockenson is going to be really good. Not to mention if things don't work out, the backup is Sam Howell, who wasn't bad just a few years ago with Washington. I remember up until like week 14, he led the league in passing yards. And so, I mean, we'll see what happens there, Justin. But it has nothing to do with TJ Hockenson, all really to do with JJ McCarthy. But if JJ McCarthy's good, he can do what Sam Darnold has been able to do. No doubt Hockenson will be a top 5 tight end this year.
I think it's a really good point you made with JJ McCarthy. Fantasy managers, that I guess then we kind of throw the ball back into your court. If you believe in JJ McCarthy, then TJ Hockenson is probably your guy to draft. And I think his value is actually really solid compared to a couple of the other guys if you want to wait. We moved to 5 where I have LaPorta, so we checked off that box with LaPorta. But Mark Andrews, you have at 5. What do you think about him this season?
Justin, I'm not going to lie. I love Mark Andrews this year. I think that there are some injuries going on with Isaiah Likely. They're saying that he might miss week 1. I'm looking here, but it's still up in the air with a few, good amount of time before kickoff, before they open the season against the Bills. And Justin, look, one thing about Mark Andrews, he did start off really bad last year. I think like 3 out of the first 5 games, he just left you with the donut. I remember he was one of the most dropped players by week 5. And I remember I was able to pick him up in every league that I had. I mean, everybody was getting rid of him. And then he flipped the switch and all the way until that divisional round matchup where he dropped that key 2-point conversion. I just feel like with Andrews, I think he's going to be targeted a lot this year with Lamar Jackson. I feel like I like what I saw. I think that Lamar Jackson is going to be on a mission this year. I am picking him. He's the co-favorite, in my opinion, to win the MVP. And I think that Lamar Jackson is going to end off with a total of 40 to 45 touchdowns. I'm loving everything about Baltimore this year. I am all things Baltimore. I mean, my background is purple. That's how much I'm serious about Baltimore. I think Mark Andrews could hit 1,000 yards. I'm thinking about 1,200 yards and about 6 to 7 touchdowns, Justin. He was really good the back half of last season. And so I just feel like, there's not really stopping him. And one last thing, Dween Nation, if Isaiah Likely is involved in this offense, he's healthy, he plays all year, to me, Justin, I don't really think it matters. I think that Mark Andrews is still going to be a really good tight end this year. As long as he's healthy and he's involved in offense, he will have a top 5 finish for sure.
I think you spoke to it perfectly. I think earlier in the offseason, I was more anti-Andrews, but as we get closer to the season starting, I'm back on board with him because you're right. He's Lamar Jackson's touchdown guy near the end zone. He had 11 touchdowns last year, and I was just looking up the stat. Andrews hasn't finished outside the top 5 in tight end points per game in the last 6 seasons. So he's a bona fide stud at the tight end position. He's dropping a little bit because I think a lot of people are remembering how he started last year. It was very bad. 2 donuts, I think, in consecutive weeks, and a lot of people dropped him. And then he bounced back, and I don't know if it was an injury plaguing him or what, but he became, one of the top tight ends the rest of the season. I think he's great there. And Lamar Jackson last year, you're right, he threw 40, 41 touchdowns. And they were, Andrews was his guy. It wasn't Zay Flowers. Bateman did get some. I don't think Hopkins is going to have much of a role in this offense. So there's not many other pass catchers that I think Lamar is going to look to in the end zone more than Mark Andrews. and we've seen he's got the pedigree of success in his entire career since he's joined the league. So I agree. I think I'm back on board with him. I probably will raise him in the rankings as we get a little bit closer, especially with all this likely news. I mean, he likely fractured part of his foot, and they said he's probably going to miss week 1. I'll push that to like 2 to 3 weeks into the season. So you're going to have Andrews all alone for a few weeks. And then even last year, I know Likely had that big week 1 performance, and there was some talk from Harbaugh that Likely could be a Pro Bowler this year. I just think that Mark Andrews, every time they both have been healthy, Andrews has been the guy. So I think you had great points there. Andrews for you at 5. We moved to 6, where I have David Njoku. You have Evan Engram. I'll start with me. I like David Njoku for a handful of reasons. Now, he is on one of the worst teams in the league, no doubt about it. But I just keep going back to 2023, where Joe Flacco was the starting quarterback for the last 10 weeks of that season. They had a playoff berth. And during that time, David Njoku was the tight end 1 in fantasy. He was an absolute stud. If you look at this year, yes, Flacco's a couple of years older. Yes, Jerry Jeudy really stepped into the spotlight last year. But I think Njoku's in line for a high target share and for a team that's going to have to throw the ball a bunch. Their new offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, used to be the tight ends coach. So he's got some familiarity with the tight ends, especially David Njoku. And also, David Njoku is in his contract year. They just drafted a guy in Harold Fannin behind him. So maybe Njoku sees that maybe his time in Cleveland could come to an end, and he needs to show out to get one more contract in his tight end career, because I believe he's 29 years old, so he's getting close to 30. He's going to want one more big contract before he retires, and I think they're just going to have to toss the ball a lot, and David Njoku is that guy. Now, there is one little doubt that I'll mention. Obviously, Joe Flacco's starting the season, but are we going to see Shador? Are we going to see Dylan Gabriel? And I think even if they throw in Shador Sanders, I'm still a fan of Njoku, because I think he'll become that security blanket for Shador Sanders. So I'm actually really high on Njoku. He's a guy that if I don't get one of those top 3 guys, he's the next guy I'm targeting.
Yeah, Justin, I really am a fan of David Njoku this year. And even if Joe Flacco is done by week 5 or 6, because a lot of people are speculating that, Joe Flacco is not going to be playing much. Not to mention, if you saw the preseason game with Shador Sanders, I think he's creating a little buzz. Although even though Shador did sustain an oblique injury, I believe, and he won't be playing in this weekend's preseason game, which sucks. But if he can remain healthy and become the next starting quarterback for the Browns, I do like Shador Sanders to lean on David Njoku there, Justin. I just feel like, with Flacco there and, looking at this quarterback depth chart, God knows what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson. I mean, is he even going to be on the roster? So he probably won't play. And if it's down to Dylan Gabriel, that would be like the minor concern I'd have with Njoku. And if Kenny Pickett's there, for sure, I'd be very hesitant to start Njoku. But if it's Flacco and Shador Sanders in and out of the lineup, I really would love David Njoku this year. I think he's going to be really good. If Flacco, Justin, plays the whole year and that they throw a sprinkle of Shador here and there, Njoku will be he'd be a must start every week there, Justin. I'm going to talk about my guy. Go right ahead and talk about my guy, Evan Engram. Justin, when the signing happened, I wasn't thinking too much about it. It wasn't until a mock draft, Dween Nation. You got to check out all our mock drafts. But it wasn't until a mock draft that we had with your dad, Victor Price. He brought him up, and you think about it, he was in New York, and he played a couple years with Eli, and then obviously Daniel Jones, and you're like, okay, well, he did okay, and then he goes to Jacksonville, has a couple years, and really good with Trevor Lawrence, and he did have a good year. I want to say it was 2022. I think you mentioned that he was one of the top. 2023, yes, he was a top leading score, one of the top scoring tight ends. I like it now in a Sean Payton offense. You remember what Jimmy Graham was able to do. Even like obviously Taysom Hill is a gadget guy, but whenever Taysom Hill was able to catch the ball and all, he was really good. And I do like this in this offense there, Justin. Bo Nix is definitely going to be looking for a second guy to throw to after, Cortland Sutton had a great season, but he's going to need, Bo Nix is going to need a dump off guy. And what better to do it in a Sean Payton led offense that can literally open any door for any kind of tight end there. And I love Evan Engram. He's still young. And I think that in Denver, they're looking for a new tight end, a new star tight end. It wasn't since the days of Julius Thomas that had top tight end finishes there in Denver. So I'm really excited for Evan Engram. Honestly, he's got a lot of speed to him, and I feel like he's kind of been bottled up and shelved for the last couple years in Jacksonville. And now Justin, he's going to have his opportunity in Denver. And I think it's going to happen for sure.
I completely agree with you. I have kind of, to me, from tight end 6 to 9, I have them kind of interchangeably. They are very close to my projections. But you're right. Evan Engram, to me, he's not washed yet. I think a lot of people look at last year like, oh, he sucked last year. Well, no, he was hurt. He missed, 8 games of the season. But I think this year is going to be very different. You join a Denver Broncos team that, if you look at their tight ends last year, they had Lucas Kroll, Nate Atkins, Greg Dulcich, Adam Troutman. Like, that's why the tight ends weren't used. I feel like a lot of people were like, well, Sean Payton didn't use any of his tight ends last year because they were crap. And Evan Engram is not that. We've seen him be a top guy in this league at the tight end position. And you're right. The Broncos need a number 2 pass catcher. Courtland Sutton had 81 catches last year, but no other wide receiver or tight end had more than 41 behind him. So there has been a big drop-off last year, and I think that's kind of the reason they lost so badly in their playoff game against the Bills. Like, if you're able to just focus and try to take out Courtland Sutton, nobody else is really able to step up. I know some people like Marvin Mims, but I think that Evan Engram will become that guy in the intermediary, getting a ton of volume. I mean, even in those games last year with Jacksonville, he averaged 7 targets per game, and now he's going to be on a better offense with a better quarterback. And so I think you're completely right. I think I probably have him a little too low right now. And I do like Evan Engram. So we'll move to tight end 7, where I have Mark Andrews. We discussed him. You talked about TJ Hockenson. We're both fairly happy with them. You're hoping JJ McCarthy, if he steps up, Hawkinson's a good play. And I think we're both on board with Mark Andrews here. We'll move to 8, where I have Travis Kelce. You have David Njoku. I'll talk about Travis Kelce, obviously the former GOAT of the tight end position for fantasy football and just NFL period. He has been great. Prior to last year, he was on a 5-6 year run of just being the top guy, a top 3 round pick that you would just set it and forget it every week. But last year he clearly took a step back due to age, due to maybe some outside distractions, maybe due to just the team being so successful. He felt he could take a step back, and it just wasn't a good year. And if you look at this year, though, I don't see much changing besides, maybe attitude if he thinks he's going to step more into, prepping for the season. But I just think Kelce's going to be fine. He's going to be solid. I think he's going to have those games where he gets 3 targets, 4 targets, and 2 catches for 35 yards, and it's a dud game. That'll definitely happen this year. And people who are like, well, Rashee Rice is not going to play, and Kelce should get more targets. Well, that happened last year. Rashee Rice missed most of the season, and Kelce was still somewhat ineffective. He had some good games. I just think that, he's in the twilight of his career. This is probably his last year. He's not actually a tight end. If I had in my starting lineup, I'm confident in every week. I feel like that tight end 7 was the tier ending there. I think Andrews you'd be happy with, Njoku, and everybody above that. But for me, I think Kelce, he doesn't take a step back from last year, but I think it's just kind of the same.
Yeah, Justin, I think that Travis Kelce is going to have a bounce back year. He even mentioned it, I want to say it was yesterday in his podcast, that he admitted that he was distracted. And it's kind of been the thing the last 2 years for Travis Kelce. And I feel like he's going to have a bounce back year because I think in the back of his head, I think he kind of knows that he's kind of on his last leg. I think that Kansas City, somewhat even at this moment, are kind of developing their next tight end. And it's going to probably happen this year with the Chiefs and their tight ends. But, last year he only had 800 yards and only 3 touchdowns. And this was a guy that's drafted, kind of high in the 4th or 5th round last year. Not to mention, I want to say the year before, he only had 980. He was like 15 shy of 1,000. So the last couple of years, he hasn't hit 1,000, and he hasn't scored more than 5 touchdowns in the last each of the last 2 seasons. So maybe this is his bounce back year. It does feel criminal to have him at number 8. He's a future Hall of Famer. However, this year, I do think he hits 1,000 yards. I do think he gets about 6 or 7 touchdowns. I think with the Chiefs losing in the Super Bowl, I think that, they have now this hunger, this chip on their shoulder. Not to mention with Denver and the Chargers in that division gunning for them. I think that now this offense is a little bit more focused, a little more intact. And so that's why I love Travis Kelce. I do think he will have a pretty good season. And that's why it was tough for me to leave him out of my top 10. I know you have him here at 8, but he's definitely a guy that you should draft around the 6th or 7th round.
All right. I just looked it up. Kind of crazy that Noah Gray scored more touchdowns than him. So the backup tight end for the Chiefs scored more. Maybe that was just weird luck, and Kelce's going to take those touchdowns back. If that happens, then maybe this is too low for him. But I think he's going to be kind of around this area at the end of the season. let's move to our tight end 9, where I have Evan Engram. We talked about it. You talked about Kelce. I think this tier to me from Njoku, at least for me, Njoku at 6 to 9 here at Evan Engram are all really close. If you're picking one over the other, kind of the thing, I don't think I bat an eye too much to it. They all offer a little bit of different stuff. And so I think that's kind of the thought process there. Let's move to 10, where we both have Tucker Kraft as our tight end 10, the last guy on our list that we'll be talking about today. With Tucker Kraft, he kind of came onto the scene last year and really played some really good spots, had some really good highlights. And he's on a team where we kind of discussed this throughout the offseason that the Packers just haven't had an alpha wide receiver or just an alpha pass catcher. And yes, they add Matthew Golden, so maybe there's some hopefulness there, but they lose Christian Watson. Dontavian Wicks is super unreliable. Romeo Doubs had that drama during the season last year. I don't know if he takes a step back. But Tucker Kraft, I think he's right in line to be, maybe the second guy in the receiving room for the Packers. And it was funny, when he got drafted, he was looked at as an afterthought because they actually drafted a tight end before him in Luke Musgrave. But Tucker Kraft has already jumped him, and I think that Tucker Kraft's in line for a really good year. And I think he's solid.
Yeah, Justin, I like him a lot there. I mean, 70 targets last year. He did have a good part of the first half of the year, and then kind of just fell off. Was able to have 700 yards and 7 touchdowns there. So I like that to all increase. Well, maybe not the touchdowns. I think that remains the same. I think he can keep 7 touchdowns, but near 1,000 yards could be a tough ask, though. However, Justin, just because it's a tough ask because, Justin, this offense is loaded. Not to mention Jordan Love is dealing with an injury. So that's the one thing that I'm a little concerned with Justin. He should be able to, be good to go. They're saying he's going to be good to go week 1 against the Lions. But there's a lot of mouths to feed with Matt Golden, their first-round pick. And, I love Romeo Doubs this year. And I know Jaden Reed is also battling injury. Doubs as well. Christian Watson's going to be out. He's going to begin the regular season on the PUP list. So maybe, Justin, there's a chance that, Tucker Kraft gets the majority of the targets to start the season there. Jordan Love is healthy. I do love Tucker Kraft, especially week 1 against the Lions, which, if you look at it, it could be a shootout there because last year the Lions went into Lambeau Field and smacked them. And even 2 years ago, they had a Thursday night matchup in Lambeau where the Lions stole one off in the road. And so I feel like, the Packers have that in the back of their mind. They're going to be coming out and shooting, gunning. And Tucker Kraft is going to be a great tight end. I just feel like if they can consistently involve them in this offense, he fits right here at tight end number 10 for sure.
I completely agree with you. Dween Nation, those are our top 10 tight ends. I think we kind of want to let's throw in some honorable mentions, guys that are right on the outside that also offer upside. And I'll start with those 2 tight ends, Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland. Obviously, they're rookie first-round picks for their teams. I think that, to me, if I go one of those top 3 tight ends, I'm not going to pick another tight end in the draft. But if I get those 6 to 9 range, if I get a Mark Andrews, if I get an Evan Engram, I kind of want to pair him with a guy that has some upside, like Tyler Warren, like Colston Loveland. Even this might be crazy. Even take the flyer on, dare I say, Kyle Pitts, if you want to. He's not the guy you're going to be starting, and maybe after a few weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, you're like, okay, he's the same old Kyle Pitts. Just drop him. But those guys kind of are my honorable mentions. Do you have any others, or do you want to talk about these guys more?
I do. I'm still a little bit of a believer in Dalton Kincaid in Buffalo. Come on, Justin. At some point, he's going to have a breakout year at some point, right? He is a former first-round pick. Another guy I want to talk about is Cade Otton. I know in Tampa Bay, there's a lot of mouths to feed. Maybe my guy Dalton Schultz in Houston. But Justin, one team that has 2 pretty good tight ends, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith was fantastic in Miami last year. I think Jonnu is dealing with an injury. I want to say it's a knee injury, so there could be a chance he could miss his week 1 or 2. But man, Justin, if Jonnu Smith had his own team, he'd be great. And if Pat Freiermuth was all alone on this Pittsburgh team, he'd be great. But hopefully old man Aaron Rodgers can get the ball to both of them, and they could be good. Let's see. One last honorable mention. Hey, we forgot about Jake Ferguson. I think that if if Jake Ferguson can get involved in this offense, he would be good. Let's see. One last person, Justin. One last person.
I like Bryn Strange actually a little bit.
In Jacksonville. Yeah.
And actually, if I could play a little fortune teller here, I was looking at some tight end schedules before we started recording, and Bryn Strange plays the bottom 2 tight end defenses against tight ends in the first 2 weeks, in the Panthers and then the Bengals. So if there's a guy going absolutely off people's radars that could be a early waiver wire pickup, maybe Bryn Strange should be discussed. But yeah, I think that kind of lasts around those honorable mentions. If you miss out on guys past that, then good luck. Maybe Likely is one of those deeper guys when he comes back, could be something. But that is all we got for you for this tight end rankings episode. We still got wide receivers. We still got running backs. We still got sleeper picks and bust picks and our my guys, our league winners, and more before the season starts, before your draft gets underway. So stay tuned. Thank you guys for listening. And Genoa, send us out.
Yo, Dween Nation. This was our tight ends episode for Fantasy 2025. We're so excited for the season to kick off. Make sure to check out our quarterbacks. We're going to have running backs dropping and wide receivers soon. So make sure to check that out. We love you guys. And as always, peace.